we thought we would talk about today is intentions. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, really in the couple of years during the pandemic, it was so difficult to think about intentions. Like it was just stay stable, be kind, as Steve has on his t-shirts. And that was really, like, to me, so clarifying and helpful, and still is. But that's what I felt like I could do. And each year it's been, and I say during the pandemic, it's still today. So, but I do feel like I've moved into a new place of kind of being able to look forward again in a different way. And, kind of trying to navigate that through being in the now, and what does that mean? And I know right now, kind of in my world, it's a kind of just stay stable, be kind, and I'll know what to do about every 12 hours. It's like I can't think past that. I just have to do 12 hours by 12 hours. At the same time, and I think some of this comes up so often because of our next step classes, and those of you in the next step classes will recognize this. It's also about, really listening within. And right now we're talking a lot about manifestation. And one of the quotes that Deepak Chopra has, let me look at my stuff here, that he said that I really like is, the dream begins in the same place where the dreams come true. And I thought it was fascinating. I'm going to read that again. The dream begins in the same place where the dreams come true. And that is a quote by Deepak Chopra. And what I realized recently in a Reiki session I was receiving for me was that I had kind of lost my daydreams. And which is really interesting because I'm a Pisces, so we're daydreamers, we're dreamers. And I also have had Neptune, which rules Pisces, exactly conjuncting planet after planet after planet. So I thought that would make me really, really daydreamy, which I was looking forward to. And fortunately, part of Reiki is, being in that state of mind. And so it has reminded me, though, of how, really the daydreams and your imagination is where it all starts. So for me, that was the first intention. And for many of you, week after week, we've been talking about different subjects, and I've been talking about the article that I wrote for the next, the fall issue of Reiki News Magazine is about Reiki for mind management. And so what I've done is switched my mind from when I need to shift what I'm thinking about into thinking, okay, what do I want to daydream about? But it's actually a practice because I'm out of the habit. I'm actually having to specifically create a habit of going back into my daydreams, which I thought was really interesting because, like I say, I'm a daydreamer, and I've always been like a wanderer. That's how I think. Like I walk in my wandering and think as I wander. And so, anyway, it really brought me back to this quote by Deepak Chopra, and then also the quotes by Einstein. And it's something imagination is something I've always thought about and talked about, and wrote an article called Reiki Heals the Imagination, and really going deeply into it, because it's probably one of the greatest areas of our inner truth and senses and perceptions that has been formed by our culturally created self, by the lives we've lived, the way we were raised, the time frame we are living in, everything about it, our generations, gender, ancestry, culture, so much of it. And so it really is helpful to use Reiki as a tool to access your imagination and your authentic imagination. And what does that even mean? And is there a reason? Like what are you doing with it? You know, I know a lot of times we move into the idea of, well, then what do I do when I have my authentic imagination engaged? And that'll be unique for each person. Because when your imagination is engaged, that's when you're, you know, going into, if you are bringing in the energy of Reiki with that, it's accessing now higher levels of consciousness, because the Reiki energy is going to take your imagination into a higher level of consciousness. I had a really good example of this recently where someone wrote about, you know, seeing peripheral things occurring, and it was scary. And I said, well, what if it was beautiful? And she immediately was able to switch it to, oh, yeah, what if instead of something scary over there, what if it's an angel? What if it's and instead of, you see that with kids sometimes with their imagination, and they're seeing things in the middle of the night, a tiger in the room. What if it's a power animal or a spirit guide instead of something scary? So shifting your imagination, because our imaginations have been very formed. Oftentimes, we also think that people with imaginations are the artistic ones. Where is research coming from? Imagination. Where are mathematics coming from? They exist, but it's the imagination that taps into them. New ideas, innovations, analytics, numbers, all of those areas are an equal imagination as a person who is artistic or creative or musical, or, you know, any of the other things we often assign to a person with an imagination. The other thing that I've seen as a practitioner with the imagination is that we have often trained it to go into the scary. And so it can actually be something to specifically heal. Sometimes we can let it run away with us into the negative forms. And a lot of times those can also be formed by not your own inner truth, but an external influence. And then sometimes you need to look at your imagination and the fear and notice maybe it's real. And it's healthy in that moment to notice the fear that is around you, and there's a reason for it, and heads up. So that's the other thing that Reiki helps with, is discernment, because it's activating your discernment. It's activating your consciousness. When you think of that mental emotional symbol, the mental emotional symbol is clarity of mind, clarity of emotion. It can actually, I have literally watched and experienced Reiki just come in and help me prioritize in a very real way. Like my